All right. Well, thanks a lot for taking a couple minutes to talk to me, man. It's good to see you again. Actually,
you too.
I remember from our last conversation, you're really a man of deep faith, I believe. I think I remember that from our previous conversation. And this is a deeply religious film, And was that one of those things that inspired you to want to be part of it? Because I kind of remember this movie from a few years ago. I think it's been going around for a little while. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, we shot it. I actually shot the film before summer.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had it in the can, but I was very keen to make sure it found the right home because actually, personally, I don't like to think of it as a religious movie. I like to think of it as a film that has faith as an organic component.
Yes, sure.
In the same way that Selma does. This is a man of faith who's very much driven by his faith, and that is what went on to, create the impact partly that he did. I'm not a fan of films that are preachy by nature and are sort of heavy-handedly proselatory. But what I really was drawn to with this story is the fact that you have two undeniably broken people. Yes. You have a circumstance out of which no good should come at all. Brian Nichols had killed 4 people on that morning of March 11th in 2005. He then found himself 45-minute drive away in Duluth, Georgia, in an apartment complex, and finds himself in a meth addict's apartment. And she had been given this book, The Purpose-Driven Life. Out of desperation, she reads it to him. Somehow, it's part of a switch being flipped in him, combined with, I think, the compassion and the humanity she showed him, and he ends up letting her go and giving himself up. To me, that is a story that barely needs any embellishment in terms of a movie. And, the book is the sort of, I guess, faith component combined with the fact that Ashley Smith feels this event was the moment beyond which she found new purpose in her life. She reconnected with God and has gone on to live a life full of purpose. And so I just think that the story in its totality is kind of incredible.
Had you heard about this story before you began exploring the film? I remember some of the news reports, but it wasn't. Not everyone knew about it. Was this a story you heard of beforehand?
I didn't. 2005, I was still living in the UK, and so the story didn't reach me where I was. But I had read the book. I had read The Purpose-Driven Life. Okay. And so when I first got sent the script in an early iteration of it, what really struck me was how brilliantly the book intersected with the story, because ultimately that book is a book about how God's purpose for our lives is bigger than the purpose we even see for ourselves.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened for Ashley Smith. She had run out. It doesn't get much worse than being strung out on meth. You've lost custody of your daughter. Your husband was killed in a drug-related murder. Yeah. And then this event happens where a killer holds a gun to your head, says, "Take the meth," and you have this moment, this epiphany of, you know what, I'm not going to. That's what it's going to take for you to turn away.
It's a lot of things converging.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the point beyond which she gained purpose. And I just felt that her life brilliantly illustrates what that book is trying to say.
Did you get to meet with Ashley during this film? I don't know if you got a chance to meet with Brian at any point.
Well, I spent a lot of time with Ashley. She was actually on set with us for a lot of the shoot. She was actually my primary source of information about what happened that night.
Oh, nice.
In my portrayal of Brian, because Brian is serving multiple life sentences. You can't get access to him. I did try. But, between her book, Ashley's book, Unlikely Angel, which charts the events of that night, and, she remembers it like it was yesterday, as you can imagine, a very traumatic event for her. So, that combined with a lot of the news and courthouse footage of the trial that went on to take place after these events is how I sort of put Brian together. I'm
constantly blown away by the kind of the diversity of roles you tend to take. You say you shot this one before Selma. I think last time I talked to you, I had mentioned that I saw you in a movie called Default.
Right.
And it was like and you jump from these different kinds of roles, and you got Selma as well, and it's like, how do you prepare for these kinds of roles? This is about because when I look at you, I don't think serial killer. I don't think
that's a good thing, by the way.
Obviously, it's a good thing. But how do you prepare for doing these kinds of roles where you're just going from things that are so different from one another?
It's such a blessing to have that be the case. It's something I've always wanted to do. I've always, the actors I admire most are actors who do that. Daniel Day-Lewis is my hero of all time, and he is a shapeshifter on a grand scale. So, it's one thing to aspire to do that. It's another thing to get the opportunities to do them, and for them people to embrace you in those roles. So playing Brian Nichols was actually a role that gave me pause, because when I play a role, I have to fully inhabit it. I have to place myself in their spiritual, mental, emotional, physical space.
Right.
Brian's a much bigger guy than me. I had to get much bigger than I am.
You look really big in that movie.
Yeah.
Kate Martin's pretty small. I know, I've seen her too. But
yeah.
Really big.
Yeah, but he was an ex-football player, and that was also one of the things. We wanted to play with the audience's prejudice. You see this big black guy take this white petite lady hostage. That conjures up all kinds of images and prejudices, to be perfectly frank, and yet you go on to deconstruct all of those. So that was something that had to be part of what we do with this. So but what really gave me pause is the mind of a killer. Why did he do what he did? And any role you play, you can't afford to judge the character. If you're judging the character, you're basically standing outside of the character, and the audience is going to pick up the fact that you're not telling the truth.
Right.
But ultimately, what made me want to do it is the story in its totality, and the fact that there is an opportunity to bring complexity to this killer through the film. But to go back to your original question, that to me is what I believe is the path to a long career, to keep the audience guessing. And in an age where the audience has such a short attention span, not just literally in a movie, but for actors generally, I think the way to keep them coming, so to speak, is for them to feel like they don't know what you're going to do next.
I found it interesting what you were just talking about really needing to inhabit, a character where you take it on. Especially when it comes to something like this, and I'm curious how you would even go about doing that. I know for me, when I think about characters who are bad guys, I figure, and this is me, the comic book nerd, I guess,
right?
Who likes the villains, who always like the bad guys.
Right.
I always imagine that you can't look at them as bad guys. You have to go inside them and see what it is they always, because bad guys always see themselves as the good guy.
Of course.
Is that something that you kind of had to do, taking on the role of Brian?
Well, it wasn't so much, I think, that Brian saw himself as a good guy, but he certainly felt justified in the actions he was taking. He felt trapped.
Right.
He says he didn't commit the rape he was on trial for. He kept on talking about feeling like the judge was going to enslave him. Yeah. His son was newly born, and he felt that he needed to break out in order to get to his son. That was something that just felt like the right thing to do for him, and he was going to do it by any means he could. That was what justified his actions. They were completely off base, and people are really still suffering the fallout of what he did that day in terms of the people he killed. But actually, to go back to what you were saying about the sort of the fanboy comic book side of all of this, one of the toughest things in playing Brian Nichols was the fact that he's a big guy. He looks like an action hero. He did wear a suit with no shirt on underneath. Right. He grabbed 2 guns and was running through Atlanta. Yeah. One of the big challenges was, how do we make him not feel like Jason Statham? Right. Do you know what I mean? How do we make it feel like this is a cold-blooded murderer, as opposed to what we normally see in cinema, where you see a guy like that and they are the hero. They are the guy who you're rooting for, and they are indiscriminately killing people in order to get to wherever they're wanting to go. Right. And here we are in a cinematic film doing the same kind of thing, but this is reality. Yeah. And so we had to work very hard in making it feel cold-blooded, making it feel real, and not glamorized or glorified in any way.
Well, thanks a lot, David, man. This has been great talking to you about Captive for a few minutes. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too, man.